"Who's this person?" my sister-in-law scoffed, stepping into my house with her husband. Her eyes were filled with disdain. "Are you trying to take advantage of us? Give us the money and leave right now," she ordered, her voice dripping with venom. I stood there, stunned. "You really think you're staying here? You and Virginia are practically strangers," her husband said coldly. "It's better if only family lives together, so leave now," he added. They were clearly focused on forcing me out, their insults hitting hard, calling me a leech and an outsider. I'd had enough. Ignoring their harsh words and refusing to meet their gaze, I grabbed my things and left the house. I'm Jasmine, 35 years old, a working housewife. At the moment, I live a peaceful life with my husband Wesley and my mother-in-law Virginia. Marriage wasn't something I had planned for, but I agreed to it under the condition that I could continue my career after the wedding. Wesley is the sweetest, always making sure I come first. I'd heard that his father passed away when Wesley was starting middle school, and since then, Virginia had been raising him and his sister on her own. We don't have children yet, but I can only imagine how hard it must have been for her. Worried about Virginia living alone, I suggested we move in together after we got married. "Virginia, what do you think about living with us? If you're okay with it, I'll be out during the day for work, so you'll have plenty of time alone like you're used to. Plus, isn't food always better when there are more people around?" I asked. Virginia smiled. "Really? To be honest, living alone has been getting lonely lately," she admitted. So we decided to live together. Wesley had been concerned about his mom living alone but hadn't been sure if he should suggest we all move in. Ultimately, neither of our places were ideal for the three of us, so we bought a new house and started fresh. We set up Virginia, who has difficulty walking, on the first floor, while we took the second floor as our bedroom. Living with her was surprisingly more comfortable than I expected, and I didn't feel stressed at all. In fact, she helped me learn how to cook and even pitched in with the cleaning, which wasn't my forte. I was grateful for all she did. "Virginia, thank you for cooking for us every day, but don't overdo it," I said. "We're going to be living like this for a long time, and if you burn yourself out now, it could get tough down the road." She shook her head. "What are you talking about? I live with you, so let me at least help out. If I don't, I'll feel like I'm freeloading, and I can't stand that," she said, her voice full of emotion. Our home was full of these warm exchanges. At first, Wesley worried about possible conflicts between mother and daughter-in-law, but seeing us get along so well, he was able to focus on his work without worry. "Jasmine, thank you for getting along so well with my mom," Wesley said one evening. "I'll work even harder to make you happy." Even though I already had all the happiness I needed, he always made such promises. "I'm already so happy with you and your mom," I replied. "If I ask for anything more, I might ruin it." I hoped these peaceful days would never end. That was my wish. But such happiness didn't last long. About 6 months after we moved in, I noticed Virginia acting differently. "Is something wrong, Virginia? If you need to talk, I'm here," I asked gently. Virginia, looking troubled, hesitated for a while but then finally spoke. "Bonnie and Malachi have been coming over almost every day," she confessed. "They said they were short on money, so they took cash from my purse, and they've been in the fridge. They're treating this house like their own." I gasped. My sister-in-law and her husband had been making themselves at home while Wesley and I were at work. I remembered meeting them once before we got married and again at the wedding. Bonnie had sized me up with a critical look. "So this is who Wesley chose?" she commented. "She's so plain, isn't she?" She fades into the background. "If I were a guy, I wouldn't even look twice." Wesley had mentioned that his sister was a bit wild, but I didn't realize how bad it was. Even though she was over 40, she didn't have a steady job and just lived recklessly. No wonder Virginia was so upset. "She's been like this for years," Virginia said. "Even when I scolded her in the past, she never listened. If you're blaming me for how she turned out, I'll take the blame." "No, it's not your fault, Virginia," I reassured her. "It's a problem when adults act selfishly and make life difficult for others." Wesley overheard the conversation and sighed deeply. "So my sister is still causing trouble," he muttered. "I thought she'd settle down after marriage, but it seems like the opposite happened." From what I gathered, Bonnie's husband Malachi wasn't any better. He liked a laid-back lifestyle, picking up odd jobs when he felt like it. Maybe that's why they were always broke, complaining about being hungry. Wesley had tried to talk sense into them in the past, but it never worked. "In 3 days, it's payday, and they'll surely come knocking," Virginia said with a stern look. "I want to put a stop to it this time." Wesley thought about taking a day off to confront them, but his work was overwhelming. I'll stay home with you instead, I said. It'll be better than leaving you to deal with them alone, right? If they start talking about money, I'll step in. So we began to plan how to handle the situation. As expected, 3 days later, on payday Friday, they arrived just as we were preparing lunch. Hey, Mom, we're here, Bonnie announced. We're starving. Got anything to eat? Anything will do, just make us something. But when Bonnie saw me, she frowned. Wait, why is Jasmine here? Aren't you supposed to be at work? I took the day off to spend time with your mom, I replied. But wait, you just said we're home like this is your house. That's pretty strange, don't you think? I couldn't hide my frustration at their boldness. It's pretty rude to walk in and say we're home, then ask her to cook for you, knowing you've been treating our home like your own pantry while we're away. That's pretty disrespectful, I said firmly. What's your problem, acting all high and mighty? Bonnie sneered. Remember your place, you're only here because of my brother. How dare you talk to me like that? If you've got time to argue, then start making lunch, she demanded. I was stunned, and Virginia looked completely disheartened. After that, Bonnie took whatever she wanted from the fridge and even walked off with a bag of groceries. Just because they were family didn't give them the right to be disrespectful. I realized my sister-in-law and her husband didn't seem to get that. At least they didn't bring up money while I was around. That was a small relief. When Wesley came home and I filled him in on what had happened, he was furious. I'll deal with them, he said, his face red with anger. I won't let them walk all over us anymore. This is the last straw. Virginia apologized repeatedly. I'm so sorry for all the trouble, she said. But I reassured her, it's not your fault. We talked things through, and eventually, we all felt a little better. After that day, Wesley put his foot down, and their visits stopped. Virginia's spirits started to lift again. Just when I thought everything would settle down, about a week later, I got a call at work. All right, I'm heading there right now, I said, feeling my thoughts freeze. It turned out that Wesley had suddenly collapsed at work, clutching his chest in pain. His coworkers said he was unconscious by the time they got him to the hospital, and they had been performing chest compressions. My hands trembled and my voice was shaky. I quickly dialed the phone, my heart racing. Virginia, it's terrible, Wesley has. She cut me off. I'm on my way. I'm hailing a cab now. We're going to the hospital. We both rushed out, getting into separate taxis and sped toward the hospital. We agreed to meet at the main desk and were escorted to the room. By the time we arrived, however, my husband had already passed. He was in cardiac arrest when he came in. We did everything we could, but, I'm sorry, the doctor said softly. Wesley had succumbed to a sudden heart attack. Both Virginia and I were in shock, reeling from the unexpected loss. The only small comfort was that his face looked so serene, as though he were merely sleeping, ready to wake up and ask, "Good morning, what's for breakfast?" It was as if he were still with us in spirit. Amid our grief, Virginia and I focused on making funeral arrangements. People from Wesley's workplace, friends, and acquaintances all came to offer their condolences. The warmth and support from everyone made it clear how much he had impacted their lives. It was chaotic, and neither Virginia nor I had much time to properly mourn. Tears filled my eyes as I murmured, there were no signs, no issues during his checkups. If I had just paid more attention, maybe I could have prevented this. Virginia shook her head firmly. Jasmine, you did more than anyone could have asked of you. We continued to lean on each other for strength. I found it difficult to move forward and decided to take a break from work, staying at home for a while. But just as I thought things might settle, something else unexpected happened. About a month after Wesley's passing, the doorbell rang. To my shock, it was Bonnie and her husband. Who is this person? Bonnie sneered. What is this? Are you trying to mooch off us? Hand over the money and leave now, she demanded, her tone filled with contempt. I stood there, stunned, as her husband added coldly, you're not thinking of staying here, are you? You and Virginia aren't even close. Only blood relatives should live together. You should leave immediately. Before I could process their words, a moving truck pulled up outside. We're moving in, Bonnie said with a laugh. This is our family's house now. While I was still reeling from the loss of Wesley, they showed no empathy. All they cared about was kicking me out. They insulted me, called me a leech, and demanded I leave. I was done. It wasn't worth arguing with them. As I packed my belongings, Bonnie mocked me. Feeling sad you can't stay here? I know it's tough being a widow. but you'll manage. You're younger than me, right? Ignoring her, I kept my head down and left the house. My first stop, the real estate agent. I planned to put the house up for sale immediately. No mortgage was due, and once I finalized the paperwork, I could move on, cutting ties with Bonnie and her husband for good. I had a feeling things would go sideways, so I had prepared in advance. I mapped out escape routes for Virginia and me, even found a backup place to stay. Bonnie and her husband were clearly planning to take advantage of Virginia's savings, but I wasn't going to let that happen. I made a vow to look after my mother-in-law for the rest of her life. A few days later, Virginia stopped by after shopping. Let's stay at a hotel for now until we find a new place. It'll be tight sharing a room, but it'll be fine, I suggested. I'm not worried about that, but, do you think we'll be okay? What if they follow us again? She asked, clearly anxious. I reassured her, don't worry, I won't let them bully us again. A month passed in relative peace, but soon enough, we heard from Bonnie again. What is this? We've been kicked out. This house belongs to Wesley, or wait, it's in Mom's name, right? You can't just throw us out, she yelled over the phone. I had been expecting this, and now it was time for the counterattack. Actually, the house has been in my name ever since I bought it, I said calmly. I don't plan on living there, so I sold it. We've already found a buyer. You'll need to vacate. Please leave as soon as possible. But where will we go? We don't have any money, we're in debt, Bonnie cried, desperate. I couldn't believe the audacity. Remember when you threw me out? I left without any complaints. Now it's your turn. You'll figure it out. Maybe check into a hotel for a while. Where are you? You're with Mom, right? Let me talk to her. We need help, Bonnie pleaded. I suspected they were deeply in debt and being pursued by creditors. That's not our problem. Stop bothering Virginia. You've already drained most of her savings. Leave her alone from now on, I said firmly. How can you be so cruel? Bonnie stammered. Her tone shifted as the realization hit her. She began crying, apologizing profusely. But Virginia ended the call swiftly. Jasmine, let's unblock her number. She'll keep bothering us otherwise. She's not going to change, Virginia said, frustration clear in her voice. For the first time, Virginia seemed relieved. Her earlier anxiety was replaced with a newfound strength. She'd finally said what she needed to say. After that, Bonnie's persistence escalated. She bombarded Virginia, tried contacting me through Wesley's old phone, and even reached out to our relatives, but no one was willing to help her anymore, all too aware of her history with gambling. Without a place to stay, Bonnie and her husband resorted to doing odd jobs and sleeping in a park until they could secure a place of their own. It was a pitiful sight compared to their earlier arrogance. At this point, Virginia and I have no intention of helping them. We're content to sit back and watch them deal with their consequences. A month later, I returned to work. I had lost weight, which concerned those around me, but at least I had a sense of stability again. And every evening, I came home to Virginia's warm smile, which brought me comfort. Though our situation was far from ordinary, I was content. I wanted to keep living this quiet, fulfilling life with my dear mother-in-law. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Stay stunned.